Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Very exciting, big event. Everybody's excited, huh?
Bring the family. Bring your friends.
We're Cinemadness podcast.
Hey, everybody. Before we get started with the actual segment here, I wanted to say that I was originally going to make this in 4 parts. I was going to do Dark Star, then Aliens, and Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection. So that's 5 parts. I've already lied to you again. No. When I started doing more research on stuff that I wanted to say about this movie, Alien, it got a little out of hand. So I'm going to have to separate the movies into multiple parts, which means that you're going to get a lot more information and a lot more of me. Also, when I originally was doing this, I was not planning on doing them as videos. Even though I made that pretty badass trailer before it was just a promotional thing, I was just gonna do like the audiograms like I've been doing for the podcast episodes. But I've actually gotten decent feedback on doing videos like this. But at the same time, I have so much information I have to read most of it, so it is going to be scripted. So I might not look directly at the camera all the time, and that's just it. And like I said, it was originally written for doing audio, so there's not going to be a lot of graphics or anything to go along. It's just me talking. If you think that's odd, then just get the audio one. But if you want to see me talk about it and see my faces when I get excited about things, then this is the way to do it. So I just want to say that really quick before we get started. So roll it. I want to talk to you about a science fiction story, a story of greed, a story of death, a story of a hero coming from an unlikely origin. This is a story of space travel, unfamiliar worlds, and having to look over your shoulder at nearly every moment. I, of course, am talking about the science fiction classic, Dune, heralded as one of the greatest pieces of science fiction literature in all of writing achievement. It was also so dense there could never possibly be a movie made about it that could do it justice, until Alejandro Jodorowsky came around. The Chilean-French art house director had an ambitious drive to make a faithful retelling of Frank Herbert's epic novel. Beginning in 1974, Jodorowsky began development on his project for Dune. And he was throwing everything he had at this movie. He wanted this to be gigantic. He wanted it to be the Dune novel, which also included using different popular music artists to set the atmosphere for the different houses or factions, whatever you want to call them. And these artists range from Tangerine Dream to Pink Floyd. He also wanted different graphic artists for each faction, like the House Harkonnen. They were going to use the art of Swiss artist Hans Rudi Giger, which we'll get into later, as you know. His disturbing biomechanical art resonated with Jodorowsky's version of the diabolical grossness, mainly of the Harkonnen. By 1976, Jodorowsky had a 14-hour movie, and nobody would come near to paying for a movie of that size, and he needed outside assistance. And after viewing John Carpenter's Dark Star, Jodorowsky was impressed by writer Dan O'Bannon, and he hired him to work on the final draft for Dune, to try to get it, compressed, but not so compressed that it turned into a 2-hour nothingness. And they spent a lot of time together reworking the treatment to something more condensed. But more importantly, O'Bannon met Giger, and both of them got along famously. See, Dan O'Bannon is now known as an influential writer in the realm of science fiction and horror, mainly throughout the 80s, because, like Giger, he had fears. But unlike Giger, instead of dealing with those fears with graphic art, he used the written word. He had an affinity with cosmic horror, such as H.P. Lovecraft and the like. His first screenplay he wrote was called They Bite, which was about a creature living under the earth for millions of years and coming up to endanger a group of campers one by one. A sort of Alien before Alien. Dan grew up in rural Missouri, and as a child, he didn't have any forms of media other than books. He didn't have any TV, he didn't have a radio, he just had books. His mother would send out for boxes of books, and Dan would read them and send the boxes back for new ones. Now, his mom didn't like him reading science fiction. It was kind of banned in his house. They weren't like super religious. His dad was really cool, actually. His dad had this like a house of curiosities, kind of like a Ripley's museum type thing. You know, he had the shrinking room and that kind of thing. And Dan actually helped his dad once make a fictional UFO landing evidence pictures just for fun, just for the goofiness of it. But his mom hated him reading science fiction, and that just made him want to read it more. So he really, really got into science fiction, like the EC comics, and so these science fiction stories, on top of Dan's imagination and fears, made his creativity just vast. And at the same time, he was always angry towards humanity, mainly authority. He was kind of like the punk rock counterculture writer of science fiction. Um, he was always angry at something. He was always yelling at something, and it comes out in the stories that he wrote before becoming Dan O'Bannon. Back to why you're here, Dune. Uh, Nobody got along with H.R. Giger while developing Dune. Everyone thought he was a weird little man who drew horrific things. And he was. He was a weird little man who drew horrific things. In fact, he's been said that he makes this art to dispel the fears that he sees in his mind. And, it's kind of scary because if you've seen Giger's work, it's not unsettling. It's not like Francis Bacon unsettling, but it's biomechanical, it's sexual, it's kind of extreme stuff, but it's beautiful in the same way. Go look it up. You can Google it. So everybody thought he was a weird little man. Everybody but Dan O'Bannon. He understood exactly who this little quiet artist was, and they quickly became friends. As the years went on, developing Dune, eventually in 1982, good year, the film rights for Dune lapsed and were scooped up by Dino De Laurentiis, a very, very prominent movie producer who could see the big things in pop culture trending, and he would jump on them. You know, we wouldn't have Conan the Barbarian without Dino De Laurentiis. We wouldn't have most of canon films, even though canon's, I mean, we all know canon's reputation. But Dino De Laurentiis, he was on top of things. Flash Gordon, not great movies, but poignant movies, cultural movies. But he went on to produce the David Lynch directed adaptation of Dune in 1984, which scrapped everything Jodorowsky had done and planned. There's actually an absolutely fantastic documentary about this whole thing. It's called Jodorowsky's Dune, and I highly recommend giving it a view just to see how epically vast his vision was. It's insane. It's insane how much he wanted to put into this film project. So coming back to America and California, O'Bannon spent all of his time and energy on Dune, and he had no other works in the pipeline. He was broke. He was desperate for a paycheck. O'Bannon hooked up with Ron Shusett, and together they developed the screen version of Total Recall, uh, based on We Can Remember It Wholesale. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. Sorry. The short story by Philip K. Dick. What you see in the movies for Total Recall are the version that O'Bannon and Shusett put together, instead of the direct adaptations. If you've ever read the short story by Philip K. Dick, you know it's a little bit different. I mean, there's not much to the story, so you needed the filling for the Dick pie. No, I'm not going to say that. I already did. You need the filling for the short story to envelop. So that made them some cash, but the well was still running dry. And after shooting Dark Star, O'Bannon and Carpenter had a falling out over director credits. Um, since it was mainly a film school project, they both had their hands in directing, but ultimately it went to John Carpenter, and they kind of I don't think they ever made up or anything, and it's sad because O'Bannon passed away. But as I mentioned in the Dark Star episode, O'Bannon was unhappy with the movie anyway, so he kept tinkering away at this dark science fiction story, which he entitled Memory. And Memory was the story of a blue collar crew of astronauts that answer a distress signal and land on a strange planet. But that's where the story ends. The whole thing was a work in progress. And Ron Shusett liked the idea, and he actually took him in to his apartment, and it was quoted, keeping him alive by feeding him hot dogs, and urged him to continue with the script, which the script that he was writing took elements of Dark Star and Memory, and became the first draft of his big science fiction breakthrough movie, Star Beast. It was Dark Star without the comedy. It was Memory without the abrupt end and amnesia. Memory ended with them not remembering why they're there. That's why it's called Memory. Haha. He was onto something, but he couldn't do it alone. So both Dan and Ron worked together to flesh out the story of Star Beast. O'Bannon suffered from severe Crohn's disease, and on a few occasions, Ron had to take him to the hospital over abdominal pains. Probably all the hot dogs. But these trips to the hospital sparked the idea of the chestburster in the Star Beast movie. His only problem, how does the creature get inside the person? And this question seemed to be the biggest hurdle of the story. They could not finish the script because they could not figure out how to put this creature inside of a person. O'Bannon couldn't think of a way. Shuss couldn't think of a way, until one night Ron was awoken from a dead sleep. These are in his words. He woke up O'Bannon, and he shook him awake, and he's like, I got it. I understand how the creature gets inside of him. And Dan's like, wow, what is it? And Shusett looks him in the eyes and says, the creature fucks him.
I said, he jumps in his face, plants a tube down him, inserts his seed in him, and later it comes bursting out of his stomach. And Dan goes, oh, my God, it's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. And we just sat up all night, and we wrote, and in 3 weeks, we had I would say, which is 85% of the plot.
Once that was complete, and they were proud of the work, O'Bannon had one more problem. He hated the name Star Beast, and he didn't want it to be the name of the script. He just put it in there as a placeholder, because they knew they needed a catchier title, something grand, something that will grab you by the face. See what I did? No, something eye-catching, but it just was not coming to them. And he kept rereading the script, and O'Bannon said that he kept going over the phrases. The alien went here. The alien did this. The alien did that. And he realized he didn't need a grandiose name. He just needed the title Alien. Now, like I said, Alien was not a single story that Dan O'Bannon just popped out of his head. He's had these ideas for years, but at the same time, he pretty much predetermined the story from his youth. Like the first script he wrote, They Bite. That was based on a childhood memory of living in Missouri. He would have seasons of cicadas coming out from the ground with both frightened and intrigued him at a young age. And the idea of cicadas burying themselves in the earth until they were stirred sparked the idea of making a creature story. It started with They Bite. I imagine that's where memory was going, and it shows in the egg scene in Alien. They're just perfectly fine until Kane breaks that laser barrier and stirs the nest, and it's all because of cicadas, disgusting little creatures. But also, because Dan O'Bannon was such an avid reader, he would take ideas from everything that he read. In fact, he was famously known for being accused of stealing ideas. He would reply with, "I didn't steal from anybody. I stole from everybody." And that's such a cool line, because that's just Dan O'Bannon being Dan O'Bannon. He's taking his ideas of things that he's read and turned them into his own things. I came up with a few things. In his biography, it was mentioned that these few things were inspirations for his writing, especially Alien. This is the Alien. The quote unquote theft included the following pieces of art. One was the story Seeds of Jupiter. It was an EC comic from 1951. It's a story of a meteorite crashing onto an aircraft carrier one night, and these seed-looking things spill out of it. One of the crew members eats one of the seeds, mocking his crewmate who sucked on peach pits constantly. The man falls ill. The creature busts out of him and jumps in the sea. And the famous last words, "Oh, at least we're done with that. We'll never see that thing again." Right? 1972, Death Rattle #1, another comic book by Kitchen Sink Comics. A space explorer finds a ritualistic statue and accidentally breaks it, and the entity inside attacks and enters his body. He becomes a walking host for something growing and gestating inside of him. It's a bit gnarlier than the Alien story, because it's out of his whole body. It's kind of more zombie like because it takes over his whole body. It's a really cool story. If you like horror comics, these are really good. More famously, At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. An expedition goes to the Antarctic and discovers an ancient civilization of terrifying horrors, much like the derelict ship and the space jockey, now known as the engineers in Alien. And a bit of Prometheus, but O'Bannon didn't have anything to do with Prometheus, so I'm not even going to bring that up. The movie It, The Terror Beyond Space, a 1958 science fiction film. Humanoid space creature takes out a crew of astronauts on Mars, and it leaves one behind. And the story is a rescue crew comes to find out what happened, trying to find the truth. But it gives the creature more opportunities. The similarities include the creature hiding in the air ducts, but it also has that feeling of isolation, that feeling of paranoia. You don't, especially later in Alien, when you have Ash acting all crazy, not knowing that he's an android and stuff, but turns on them. There's that a seed of the story in there too. 1965 movie Planet of the Vampires. A crew of astronauts discover an ancient monstrous civilization on another planet, including a gigantic skeleton. Once again alluding to the race of engineers, the space jockey. Other similarities include the ship design of the Nostromo and the landing sequence. But that would be more of a Ridley Scott thing than Dan O'Bannon because it's the way it was shot. But if you watch Planet of the Vampires and you see the ship landing, it's very, very similar to them landing on LV-426 and Alien. And last but not least, and definitely not like the final thing on here, was a 1966 Roger Corman picture, The Queen of Blood. An alien distress signal is received by Earth, and a crew investigates, and they find a dead creature in a chair. And they find a humanoid malevolent creature. Similarities like the signal that brought the Nostromo to LV-426, and also the space jockey dead in the chair. So there are elements more that he took from other things, but a lot of it came from Dark Star. A lot of it came from the inspiration and art he saw from H.R. Giger's work. And a lot of it was from his childhood and the stuff that he was raised seeing and the raised reading. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with him taking elements from other stories and creating a whole other thing about it. And he never said that it was everything original. He actually, like I said before, he actually said, I stole from everybody. And that's interesting to me. That's something that budding writers don't think about. They're always told, write what you know. Well, if all you know is stories, then you're going to take from those stories. Look at Star Wars as one thing. It's the same premise of that ideal taking from mythology and theology and making it your own, taking from samurai pictures and stories of feudal Japan and making it a science fiction space opera. Dan O'Bannon took those ideas, elevated them, and evolved them into where we are now. So that's a little bit about where the inspiration came from. That was just a small amount of suggestions. There's probably volumes of stuff that he took from, especially as much of a reader he was from childhood. But anyway, after finishing his final draft for Alien, O'Bannon took the script and wanted to sell it. First, he went to Roger Corman, whom he knew would most likely produce the picture. I mean, that's what Corman does. He's like Troma, but without the lack of money. He has just the right amount of money to get movies produced the way they should be produced. But in this instance, even though Corman loved the script, he loved it so much, he rejected it because his company, New World Pictures, could never afford the budget that this movie deserves. He flat out said, I do not want this script unless no one else will take it. And it almost came to that. O'Bannon shopped it to all major studios, and he almost had to go back to Corman. In fact, as much as a fan I am of Roger Corman, and I really am a fan, I can't imagine a Corman-produced Alien movie. I mean, we've kind of seen one in Galaxy of Terror, but I can't imagine the proper Alien script. And apparently neither could Corman. And also, I love that Corman recognized the writing talent so much. He wanted to see a better version rather than just going, oh yeah, I'll take this script and make some money off of it. He wanted to see Dan O'Bannon's Alien. Moving on to 1977. The script for Alien sat on Alan Ladd Jr.'s desk, president of 20th Century Fox. And it sat there, and it sat there until the wars began. The Star Wars. As you can imagine, 20th Century Fox had a really good time in 1977 with the unlikely success of Star Wars. It opened on what, like 35 theaters, 53 theaters. I don't know. I got dyslexic with that number. I didn't look it up. So once the Star Wars hype was dying down, Fox wanted to keep Hollywood space race alive. So Ladd had said, we want a new space movie after Star Wars. He really didn't care what type of movie. He just wanted it to be in space. And the only script he had that was in space was Alien. So it got the green light from 20th Century Fox. Bannon being connected with both the Dune and the Total Recall project, or sorry, Total Recall, if you want to pronounce it weird, he got 20th Century Fox to take in H.R. Giger to work on technology and creature designs, and that's really cool. That's something that probably would change the way everyone thought and saw these movies if they didn't have mainly Giger. As the production went on, Fox tried to keep O'Bannon as little involved as possible. In fact, while shooting, he was denied to look at the dailies when they were done. And he had to sneak into the projection room just to see the progress. He saw the footage shot, and with low expectation, he nearly wept at seeing his vision come to life the way he pictured it. And I can see that after his thinking of a disaster that Dark Star was, and just the losses that he got with being involved with Dune and having this gigantic project in front of him, and just watching it just crumble before him, and not being able to produce Total Recall. He just needed this win. This is like the first script he sold to a major motion picture company, and that really jump started his big pop culture career. He wrote other staples of pop culture, such as Return of the Living Dead. He wrote the first movie for that. He actually created the idea of zombies eating brains, just as a throwaway story beat. They were like, what do we need to motivate them? And he's like, I don't know, let's have them eat brains or something. Boom, right there. He also did Dead and Buried, a great moody kind of whodunit, but with dead people. It started a really young Robert Englund. It's a great movie. It felt like a Stephen King movie because it was this seaside village in Maine, but it had nothing to do with Stephen King, but it felt like him. And he did 2 Tobe Hooper pictures for Canon, 2 of my absolute favorite Tobe Hooper movies. He wrote Life Force and Invaders from Mars. And of course, he gets credit for every single Alien movie that came out after that because he created the world, he created the characters and stuff. So he gets that, created by writing credit. Dan O'Bannon is known in the sci-fi and horror communities as a groundbreaking creator. Sadly, he passed away in 2019 due to his Crohn's disease. His widow, Diane, has gone on to say that Dan may be gone, but his work isn't finished. She believes he's still out there in some form, building up a way to make a cultural comeback. And with the amount of unproduced work that he amassed, I absolutely believe her. Thank you so much for coming with me on this journey. I honestly didn't expect this project to be as in depth as it's turning out to be, but as I did the research and talked to people about it, I found out that O'Bannon wasn't as well known as he should be. I live in the alien world. I live in the sci-fi horror world, so the name Dan O'Bannon pops up a lot in my world, and it doesn't for a lot of people. So I just really wanted people to realize how intriguing and talented the man is. So here we are now at a multi-tier miniseries inside a multi-tier miniseries. And thanks for coming with me on this ride. Let me know in the comments how you feel about me changing it up to being even more informative. How you like this format or not, or let me know what your favorite Dan O'Bannon project was. Make sure you subscribe and stay updated with new episodes of this deep dive. And also, if you're subscribed, check out all our other shows on the Cinemadness podcast. If you like to hear me droning about movies by myself, you should hear me droning about movies with my other two co-hosts on the Cinemadness podcast, our main show. And also our two podcasts, our two other hosts have their own things going on. Roman has his own stuff. Every so often he'll put out a couple real stories from the aisles, which are personal stories about movies that we've seen that reflect on us with those stories. Allison has her occasional show, Say Anything with Allison, when she just gets a wild movie bug in her head. She wants to get it out, so she has her own format for that, and it's fun. She's fantastic to listen to. We have some upcoming projects. I know Roman has a big upcoming project with his History of Hysteria type thing, and if you subscribe, you can stay abreast for those projects and shows and stuff. So yeah, so subscribe, please. I mean, you don't have to. I'm just asking. It'd be cool. It lets us know that we're doing the right thing, and it does also make YouTube go, "Hey, they're onto something." I don't know. I'm bad at self promotion. Dan O'Bannon built the skeleton of the Alien series, and his writing has a lasting effect. If you're interested in learning more about the man, make sure you check out the documentaries Memory, The Origin of Alien. It's the first 15, maybe 20 minutes are all about Dan O'Bannon and his growing up and stuff. It's eye-opening and stuff that I had to learn about. And also Jodorowsky's Dune. It has less O'Bannon in it, but it's a really amazing story about a movie we'll never see. And it's probably for the best because well, we have our new Dune movies, which are, well, the first one was just unbelievable, but I'm done talking about Dune. I think maybe when we get more into gear, we'll talk more about Dune. But also, if you're interested in Dan O'Bannon's first draft of Alien, the Star Beast, as it were, Dark Horse Comics published a graphic novel adapting that first script into the graphic novel. So you can actually get that pretty much anywhere. Your local comic book shop, Amazon, or download it through a digital store or something. Give it a read if you like that. My Alien deep dive continues next with Ridley Scott and the pre-production of Alien. So I hope you come back, and thanks again for listening to me drone on about a writer, and we haven't even gotten into the movie yet. But this is why I do it. This is why I love being part of the Cinemadness podcast. So I will see you for Ridley Scott on the next one, and remember, always celebrate cinema. Bye.